Just imagine if, after a person dies, their clone takes their place. This clone looks exactly the same and does everything just like them. But in the end, what event occurs that brings this matter to national security? In the beginning of this story, we see a boy named Robert who participates in an unknown game. John had to pick up a weapon from the table where the dice were kept and fire at his opponent. Just as Robert was about to do this, the curtain covering the ground was removed. In the next moment, someone suddenly started firing arrows at Robert. He was about to go under the table to save himself, but then an arrow hit him directly in the chest, killing him instantly. Now we see the man who shot the arrow and eliminated his opponent. The shocking thing is that the face of this second man looked exactly like Robert's. In fact, this was Robert's clone, who looked exactly like him, and all these events were part of a game that Robert's clone had won. But why all this is happening, we will find out later. Now we are introduced to a girl named Sarah, who is very carefree and fun-loving. Sarah goes to a nightclub and enjoys herself all night while drinking a lot of alcohol. Sarah also has a boyfriend, but she is in a long-distance relationship. She even moved to another city, leaving her mom and dad behind. Now, Sarah becomes a little sad because her boyfriend Peter never visited her much since he worked in another city. One day, when Sarah wakes up, she sees a lot of blood on her bed. In fact, she had vomited blood while sleeping. After seeing all this, Sarah goes to a hospital, but her condition worsens to the point where she vomits blood while submitting her reports. Seeing her serious condition, the doctors immediately admit her to the hospital. Sarah herself doesn't understand what is happening to her. She had been feeling a burning sensation in her back for a few months, and now all these issues had escalated significantly. A doctor, after checking Sarah's reports, informs her that she has a very dangerous cancer in her stomach that cannot be cured. This means that Sarah has very little time left. Although cancer treatment is possible in medical science, only 1% of people survive stomach cancer. Therefore, the doctor advises Sarah to enjoy whatever time she has left and, most importantly, to reduce her alcohol consumption. Taking the doctor's advice, Sarah returns home. She doesn't inform her mom and dad or her boyfriend Peter about her critical condition because she doesn't want anyone to be troubled because of her. Sarah reduces her drinking a little, but she had no idea that an unknown thing would change her entire life. The next day, Peter calls Sarah. In fact, Peter had learned about Sarah's critical condition. He is a bit angry with her because she should have told him about this condition first. But regardless, Peter tells Sarah to take care of herself and to do whatever makes her happy. Peter also tries to finish his work quickly so he can meet Sarah soon, but Sarah doesn't have much time left. One day, Sarah goes to the same doctor for a checkup, where she learns that the doctor had informed Peter about her condition. However, Sarah did not want this at all. Now, the doctor gives Sarah two options. The first option was to undergo surgery, where the chances of survival were less than 1%. The second option was to accept her condition and live the remaining time as best as she could. Sarah could create a clone of herself that would be kept with her family, and this clone could perform all of Sarah's duties. This process of creating a clone is referred to as human cloning. Sarah found this idea quite appealing, so she started researching the company that creates clones. Sarah looked at the review section and saw that many people were happy with their clones, and after their passing, the clones were managing all the responsibilities well. After thinking a lot, Sarah decided that she would get her clone made and quickly fixed an appointment for the next day. When she went to the cloning company, a doctor explained everything to her. The doctor mentioned that creating a clone required a lot of money, which Sarah didn't have. However, the company had a scheme where Sarah could pay only 10% of the total cost up front, and after her passing, her clone would gradually pay off the loan to the company. Sarah liked this scheme a lot, so she went with the doctor to the surgery room, where all her DNA tests would be conducted and her body structure would be used to create her clone. A few hours later, Sarah saw her clone in front of her and was completely shocked because the company had copied every detail accurately. Sarah decided to name her clone Sarah too. As time went by, Sarah started telling Sarah too all about herself. She assured Sarah too that after her passing, she would take care of her family and her boyfriend. It made Sarah feel good to know that someone would look after her family after she was gone. Soon, Sarah too managed everything well, while the real Sarah was just waiting for her death. As time passed, a whole year went by, and nothing happened to Sarah. Every day, she would wake up thinking that the next day would be her last. But when Sarah returned to the hospital for her checkup, then the doctor informed her that she was among the 1% of people whose cancer had been cured, meaning Sarah would not die. Her life had been saved. When Sarah learned all this, she was very shaken. The doctor also explained the rules of the cloning company, which allowed only deceased individuals to keep their clones. If a patient did not die, the clones created for them would eventually be destroyed. Sarah was terrified because her clone had taken Peter as her boyfriend and was living with him. The clone had made a special place in the hearts of Sarah's family. Immediately, the real Sarah went home to see her clone. There, she discovered that Sarah too was sitting with Peter and her mom, having a great time chatting. The real Sarah was extremely angry because she had to somehow separate her clone from Peter. Peter took the real Sarah outside and told her that he didn't like her. Rather, he liked Sarah too a lot. Meanwhile, the clone had decided that she would not be destroyed, but deserved the right to live like a human. Sarah too had even filed a petition in court to gain a chance at life. The real Sarah was completely confused about what to do. Then, she learned about a very important rule of the company. When a patient and their created clone appeal for life, a death game occurs between the two. The one who loses this game would be killed. This same game was shown at the beginning of the story, where Robert and his clone fought against each other, and unfortunately, Robert's clone killed the real Robert. It was decided that Robert's clone would be kept alive, while the real Robert would be killed. Now, Sarah and her clone had to play the same game. So, Sarah sought training from a trainer named Ben, who would teach her various skills to defeat her clone during the fight. The first thing Ben wanted was to remove the fear that was instilled in Sarah's mind. So, he showed Sarah strange murder films and placed a variety of weapons in front of her that she could use to defeat her clone. However, Ben informed her that the biggest weapon in the fight would be herself, because if she lost her courage, her clone could kill her. This is why Sarah started her training with great dedication. Ben aimed to strengthen Sarah's mindset by sending her to numerous autopsies, where body parts were dissected. By showing her all these things, Ben only wanted to ensure that Sarah wouldn't be scared. Slowly, many months passed, and Sarah's fighting techniques improved significantly. The day had finally arrived for her fight with her clone, but just then, she received news that the fight had been postponed due to heavy rain. Now, this fight would happen a month later, prompting Sarah to go meet her boyfriend, Peter. Sarah told Peter that she would do everything she could to win this fight and defeat her clone to return to his life, because he truly loved the real Sarah. But how could he express all this in front of her? The next day, Ben brought a sick dog in front of Sarah. He said, "Aim at this dog and kill it." The dog was in such bad condition that it was on the verge of death. But as expected, Sarah couldn't bring herself to kill the dog due to her emotions, and she knew she couldn't show any mercy during the fight. Just then, Sarah noticed her clone watching her from near the window, which filled her with rage. In anger, she began firing at her clone. Sarah's clone tried to escape, but as Sarah pursued her down the road, she saw that one of her arrows had struck a small dog in the eye, killing it instantly. Now, Sarah was filled with immense anger towards herself and wanted to unleash that anger on her clone. The real Sarah and her clone continued running until they reached a room where her clone managed to trap her. Because she needed to discuss something, the dual Sarah told the real Sarah, "I want to live the way you do. I just want to live like a human, because we clones also have the right to live. You have no right to take this life away from me." Somewhere deep down, Sarah began to feel that her clone's words were right. So, the dual Sarah took the real Sarah to a place where all the people who had created their clones were gathered. Many of them had chosen to kill their clones during the fight to survive. But after careful consideration, everyone there decided that both they and their clones could live together if they moved to different cities, thus avoiding any problems. After listening to all this, both Sarah and her dual decided to move to another city. They packed their belongings and set out in their car. However, on the way, Sarah stopped the car to check their things. She handed some water to the real Sarah, and after drinking, blood suddenly started flowing from the real Sarah's nose. In reality, the dual Sarah had mixed poison into the water. This meant that the real Sarah couldn't survive, and the fight between the two would decide who would live. The dual Sarah left the real Sarah there to die and drove back to the city, where everyone was gathered. The dual Sarah claimed to be the real Sarah, but the real Sarah couldn't show up because she was dead. Days passed, and since the real Sarah didn't appear, the dual Sarah was given a chance to live. However, no one knew that she was not the real Sarah, but the dual. The dual Sarah began to imitate everything the real Sarah had done, even marrying Peter and taking care of her family. But eventually, over time, the family would find out that she was not the real Sarah. And thus, our movie ends on this suspenseful note.